is the worst plague haunting America? Is it taxation? Racism? Sexuality? In truth, it is none of these. There's one thing that all the problematic trends in our country have in common. One thing that hides in the midst of the folds of all others, festering and spreading disease tentacles into the minds of all who breathe in American air. A lack of trust. Everything boils down to trust. Americans have lost trust in their God, they've lost trust in their leaders, they've lost trust in their news outlets, and they have lost trust in each other. Now, why is that? What has made Americans so sensitive to doubt and so reluctant to have faith in those who are around them? What has taught us to question our superiors and not take their words for granted? Why do we lock our doors at night and carry pepper spray on our keychains? The truth? Impersonal anonymity. As strange as this sounds, impersonal anonymity is a rather obvious conclusion. View it from the perspective of those who we would do well not to trust. The stranger online who argues with a passion that the earth is flat. The man in the cap and sunglasses in the dirty white van offering ice cream to small children. Or the author of an anonymous tip to the police who wrote that her ex-boyfriend was a terrorist from Mars. What do they all have in common? They are unknown and therefore protected. Their anonymity shields them from consequences or liability, however major or minor the breach of trust is. However, this does not always have to be the case. If consequences are replaced and boundaries reapplied, trust could return to America. That is why I, Angelina Oliver, am advocating for the return of the Fairness Doctrine policy and the elimination of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. The Fairness Doctrine was a policy introduced in 1949, and it required public media to present multiple sides of controversial arguments within political spectrums, as well as give each side equal airtime. This policy ensured that the media was politically neutral and did not spend all of its efforts on spreading controversy. The Fairness Doctrine was eliminated in 1987 because it was ruled that it intruded upon the media's First Amendment rights to freedom of the press. However, the removal of the Fairness Doctrine policy allowed public media to take sides, and the news became less focused on the actual news, instead capitalizing on political controversy to gain popularity. According to the Pew Research Center, 61% of adults in America believe that the news media, quote, intentionally ignores stories that are important to the public, unquote. Pew Research Center, 2019. How can the news be trusted if it isn't doing its job? When the Fairness Doctrine, the definition of the media's freedom of speech should also be in question. When the Fairness Doctrine was eliminated, it was on a basis that the definition of freedom of the press meant that the public media was allowed to shout about whatever it wanted. But the original intention of the First Amendment was to, as stated by George Miller from Quora.com, quote, expose the populace to the broadest range of ideas and viewpoints, unquote. Quora, 2022. Now, how the re-implementation of the Fairness Doctrine bring truth and trust back to America? The answer is simple. By re-implementing the Fairness Doctrine, which rules that all the public media must offer equal time to opposite viewpoints, the American people will have the freedom to choose their own opinions, and not the opinions of whatever news station happens to be playing at the time. This would only apply to public media outlets and not private podcasts. The people would be able to trust the news, as it would be impossible for the media to push their own agendas. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act is related to the Fairness Doctrine, in that Section 230 is also responsible for the lack of trust and accountability that we see today. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act was implemented in 1996, and it served to protect websites on the newborn internet from those who posted material on said websites. These websites are protected from the consequences of any and all posts, whether it be false information or exploitation. Harvard Business Review states in the article, "It's time to update Section 230 that, quote, as social and commercial interaction increasingly move online, social media platforms' low incentives to curb harm are reducing public trust, making it harder for society to benefit from these services, and harder for legitimate online businesses to profit from providing them," unquote. Harvard Business Review, 2021. The internet has developed beyond the limited possibilities of 1996, becoming capable of much more serious destructiveness than was previously thought. George Miller remarks that, quote, the internet created something new. Now, instead of one-to-many publishing, we have many-to-many publishing, but the publishers can remain anonymous and the platforms are shielded from liability. This has created an environment where professional journalism and truth are drowned out by falsehood. There are no repercussions for spreading falsehood, unquote. Quora, 2022. With so many sites preaching false tales without liability or any repercussions, it is a small wonder that 75% of Americans say that their trust in the federal government has been shrinking, and 64% say that their trust in each other has shrunken as well, according to the Pew Research Center 2019. The internet and the public media are, aside from word of mouth, the only way citizens have access to information concerning the country and world affairs. In a country where your political opinion defines you in more ways than one, how can sincerity and truth prevail, particularly when the publishers of all available information are determined to decide your opinions for you? Should it be necessary to pick through the overwhelming surge of media outlets to find the truth? Of course not. This is not the purpose of the internet or the news media, which are meant to bring fresh information, not obscure, out-of-context facts so often clouded over by sharp opinions. To reform both the internet and the news media, it has become increasingly necessary to revoke Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act and reinstate the Fairness Doctrine if we want any hope of both truth and trust in the future. Thank you.